My God, Eleanor, did you seriously come to your own husband's funeral in that? Kimberly's voice, a shard of ice in the warm, somber air of the chapel, sliced through the reverent silence. It was a sound that did not belong amongst the gentle weeping and the soft rustle of tissues. It was sharp, metallic, and utterly devoid of compassion. Her words were not whispered. They were projected, designed to carry, to land like a physical blow. It's embarrassing. You look like a pauper. Instantly, 100 pairs of eyes, previously fixed on the polished mahogany casket adorned with a spray of white lilies, swiveled to face me. I felt the weight of their collective gaze, a sudden, heavy cloak of scrutiny and judgment. I stood there, a 70-year-old woman mourning the loss of my partner of 50 years, and in that moment, I was reduced to my attire. My dress was simple, a sheath of black silk crepe that fell gracefully to my mid-calf. It was elegant in its austerity, chosen specifically for its understated nature. I wanted to fade into the background, to be a quiet vessel for my grief, not a spectacle. But my daughter-in-law, my son Julian's wife, was offended by this simplicity. To her, it was not a sign of respect, but a declaration of poverty. What she could not possibly know, what no one in that room could fathom, was that this supposedly cheap piece of fabric, this symbol of my apparent destitution, had been custom-made for me by a reclusive Parisian couturier. It had no label, no ostentatious branding, because its value was not meant for public consumption. Its creation had cost a sum that could have purchased a luxury car, a quiet $80,000 for a whisper of silk that now hung on my frame. "Kimberly, please, we're saying goodbye to Dad," my son Julian murmured beside me, his voice strained with a familiar mix of embarrassment and apprehension. He tugged lightly at his wife's arm, a futile gesture she easily shook off. But Kimberly had already found her audience. The hushed whispers of the congregation were her fuel. "No, Julian, someone has to say it," she insisted, her voice rising in theatrical indignation. "I work in high-end fashion. I know quality when I see it. And this?" She gestured toward me with a perfectly manicured hand, her disdain unconcealed. "This is a clearance rack special. Your mother has zero class." Her two friends, seated beside her like twin acolytes, nodded in perfect, synchronized agreement. Their names were Candace and Naomi, and they were shadows of Kimberly, echoing her opinions and amplifying her cruelty. They whispered amongst themselves, their glances toward me filled with a mixture of pity and contempt. The murmur of disapproval, sparked by Kimberly, began to spread through the pews like a contagion. I remained silent, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, my posture erect. I allowed my expression to crumple slightly, to show a flicker of pain, pretending her words cut me as deeply as she intended. Inside, a different storm was brewing. A cold, quiet fury began to crystallize in my heart. "Poor Elias," Kimberly continued, her voice now even louder, reaching the far corners of the chapel. "He must be turning over in his grave, seeing his widow didn't even have the respect to dress decently for his final farewell. How utterly humiliating for the entire family." Tears began to well up in my eyes, and for a moment, even I was convinced they were born of sorrow. But they were not. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage that had been simmering for years, a rage I had carefully suppressed for the sake of my son. This woman, this parasite who had attached herself to my family, dared to humiliate me on the most painful day of my life. She stood there, passing judgment from her shallow throne of brand names and price tags, completely unaware that I was the silent, unseen owner of the very brand she worked for. I was Serafina Vance, the founder and sole proprietor of Vance Atelier, the luxury retail empire for which she was a mere sales associate. "Just look at her," she pressed on, her performance escalating. "She can't even afford a decent dress. Julian, you should really give your mother some money so she can buy something appropriate for these occasions." I almost smiled. If she only knew. If she had any inkling that my closets at home held a curated collection of over 200 designer gowns, that my private bank accounts held more zeros than she could count in a lifetime, and that her termination paperwork was, in a manner of speaking, already signed and waiting in my private office, waiting for the right moment to be filed. My daughter Belle, who was sitting on my other side, gently touched my arm. "Mom, don't listen to her. She's being cruel," she whispered, her voice fierce with protective love. But I needed to hear more. I needed Kimberly to keep talking. I needed her to dig her own professional grave deeper, with every arrogant, ignorant word. You know what, Julian? Kimberly turned her dramatic focus back to her husband, ensuring everyone could hear. When we have children, I hope they never end up like your mother. So utterly basic. She shot me a look of profound pity, as if I were a stray animal she had found on the street. Look at her. She doesn't even know how to dress for such a momentous occasion. The snickers from her friends grew louder, less discreet. Candace, emboldened by the lack of reprisal, even dared to comment aloud, "It's true, Kim. I work in retail too, and that dress couldn't have cost more than $100, tops, if they only knew." If they had any idea that the row of tiny, demure buttons running down the back of my dress, which appeared to be simple black plastic, were in fact hand-carved black pearls, each one costing more than $500. "Exactly, Candace," Kimberly retorted, pleased with the validation. "That's why I say she has no class. At the boutique where I work, Vance Atelier, we cater to a sophisticated clientele, women who truly understand fashion and elegance." She gestured toward me dismissively. "Not this." My son Julian looked intensely uncomfortable, shifting in his seat, his gaze fixed on his shoes. But he said nothing. He never did. He had always been a coward when it came to confronting his wife. His desire for a peaceful home life always trumped his duty to defend his own mother. "Tiffany, that's enough." Belle finally intervened, her voice firm and clear, cutting through Kimberly's monologue. "No, let her be," I said at last, my own voice sounding soft, fragile, and slightly broken. It was a masterful performance, honed by years of observing boardroom negotiations. "She's right. I don't understand these elegant things like she does." Kimberly's lips curved into a triumphant smile. "At least you admit it," she said, her tone softening into one of patronizing condescension. "Look, Eleanor, it's not your fault you were born without good taste. But you could at least make an effort not to embarrass the family in public." Her friends offered a few discreet claps of approval, Naomi added with a voice dripping in false sympathy. "Oh, the poor thing. It must be so difficult not having the resources to dress appropriately." "Precisely," Kimberly continued, emboldened by her perceived victory. "Imagine showing up to your own husband's funeral dressed like you're running to Walmart for groceries. She just has no common sense." The whispers intensified throughout the chapel. I could hear fragments of conversation drifting toward me. What a shame. The poor woman. So embarrassing. It was perfect. The more people who witnessed this public humiliation, the sweeter, the more deliciously complete my revenge would be. "And those shoes?" Kimberly went on, not yet finished with her critique, pointing at my classic black leather pumps. "They look like something you'd find at a flea market. Goodness, if I were her, I'd be ashamed to leave the house looking like that." Those pumps were a custom pair from an Italian artisan, a gift from Elias 2 Christmases ago. They had cost $12,000, but they were designed for comfort and timeless style, not for screaming their price tag across a room. She would never know. "Look, Eleanor," she said, leaning in conspiratorially, her voice a stage whisper meant for the surrounding pews. "I know you don't have much money. But the next time you need to dress for something important, I can lend you something from my wardrobe. I have connections at the best stores." The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. This woman, who earned a base salary of barely $3,000 a month selling my clothing in my boutique, was offering to lend me dresses from a wardrobe likely purchased with credit card debt. If only she knew that I personally reviewed and signed the payroll checks that funded her illusions of grandeur. "That's very kind of you, Kimberly," I replied, my voice trembling with feigned gratitude. "But I wouldn't want to cause you any trouble." "It's no trouble at all. It's Christian charity," she responded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's what any decent person would do in my position." Her friends murmured their approval. Candace even commented, "You're an angel, Kim. Not everyone would be so generous to someone so limited." Limited. The word echoed in my mind. If they only knew the scope of my limitations, which included ownership of 17 luxury boutiques across the country, 3 textile factories in Europe, and a personal fortune that exceeded $100 million. Furthermore, Kimberly added, now addressing the entire congregation as if she were delivering a sermon, "I think we can all learn a lesson from this. The importance of education, of having aspirations, of not settling for mediocrity. A few people in the back, likely colleagues of hers, offered a smattering of applause, confirming that she had achieved her goal. She had successfully turned my husband's funeral into her personal showcase of moral and aesthetic superiority. Poor Elias, she sighed theatrically, dabbing at a non-existent tear. He was always so worried about his mother. He used to tell me he didn't know how she'd manage without him. She was right about one thing. My late husband had always worried about me, but not for the reasons she imagined. He knew my heart was too kind, that I forgave too easily, that I often chose peace over confrontation. He always told me, "Eleanor, my love, the day I'm gone, you cannot let anyone trample on you." That day had arrived, and I would not let him down. After the spectacle Kimberly had created at the funeral, a performance that would forever taint my memory of saying goodbye to my husband, I drove myself home. I did so in my 2015 Honda Civic, a perfectly reliable car I had deliberately chosen to maintain my facade as a poor, helpless widow. The truth was, my private garage, a climate-controlled facility hidden beneath my modest suburban home, housed a vintage Bentley, a sleek Mercedes S-Class, and a Porsche that Elias had gifted me for our 40th anniversary. No one knew about them. Not my children, not my neighbors, not even my financial advisor. But today, I needed to continue being the Eleanor Vance everyone thought they knew. The unrefined mother-in-law, the widow without resources, the woman who, according to my daughter-in-law, possessed not a single trace of elegance. Arriving at my unassuming apartment, which was actually the top floor of a building I secretly owned, I slipped off my $12,000 pumps and walked across the simple hardwood floors to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of wine. Not just any wine, but a vintage Bordeaux that cost $5,000 a bottle, a treasure from a small vineyard Elias and I had invested in decades ago. But to the outside world, I was the lady who bought boxed wine at the grocery store, a harmless eccentric. My phone rang, its cheerful tone a stark contrast to the heavy silence of the apartment. It was Belle, my daughter. "Mom, I'm so sorry about what happened today. Kimberly was absolutely horrible," she said, her voice still crackling with anger. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I replied, adopting a tired, resigned voice. I'm used to her comments by now. "But it's not right, Mom. To act like that at Dad's funeral of all places, it's inhuman." Belle, like her brother, did not know the truth about my financial situation. Years ago, Elias and I had made a conscious decision to keep our own children in the dark about the true extent of our wealth. It was safer that way, less complicated. It allowed us to see the people around them, and around us, for who they truly were, unclouded by the corrupting influence of money. "I'm going to talk to Julian tomorrow," Belle continued, her protective instincts on full display. "He cannot let his wife treat you like that." "No, please don't do that," I said, playing my part. "I don't want to cause any more trouble in their marriage." But the trouble was already brewing, a storm of my own creation. Kimberly didn't know it yet, but her employer was about to receive a very specific phone call. After hanging up with Belle, I walked to my study. It was a room none of my children knew about, hidden behind a section of wall that appeared to be a normal, built-in bookshelf. With a soft click, the bookshelf swung inward, revealing my true sanctuary. There, in that hidden chamber, lay my true treasures, the meticulously organized contracts for my companies, the financial statements for my boutiques, and, of course, the personnel files for all my employees. I pulled out one file in particular, Kimberly Albright, Sales Associate, Level 2, at my flagship store. Base salary, $3,000 a month, plus commission. I opened her file and reviewed her history, my eyes scanning the pages with practiced efficiency. 3 formal warnings for tardiness, 2 separate customer complaints citing a dismissive and condescending attitude, and a supervisor's report from just last month, noting her unwarranted air of superiority and a tendency to judge customers based on their appearance. It was all there, a perfect paper trail of her incompetence and arrogance. I picked up my private phone, a secure line I used only for business matters, and dialed the number for Janice Cromwell, my Director of Human Resources. "Miss Vance, I am so very sorry for your loss," Janice said, her voice filled with genuine sorrow. Janice had been with me for 15 years. She was more than an employee. She was a trusted confidant. "Thank you, Janice." I said, my voice now crisp and businesslike, but I need you to handle a personal matter for me tomorrow. Of course. Anything. Kimberly Albright, an employee at the downtown boutique. I want you to meticulously review her performance over the last 6 months. Compile everything. Any specific issues I should focus on? Let's just say she has demonstrated a profound lack of respect for our clientele that I simply will not tolerate in my company. Janice understood perfectly. After 15 years, she could read the nuances in my tone. She knew that when I spoke like this, things were serious. Understood. You want me to prepare the documentation for disciplinary action. Prepare everything, Janice, but we will wait for the perfect moment to act. After hanging up, I sat back in my Italian leather chair, the one Elias had always said made me look like a queen on her throne, and reflected on the day's events. Kimberly's public humiliation had been nothing more than an appetizer. She had no idea she had just declared war on the wrong person. My late husband Elias always told me I was too kind, too tolerant. Eleanor, he would repeat, his voice a gentle rumble. Some people confuse kindness with weakness. And when that happens, you have to teach them the difference. For 50 years of marriage, he had been my protective shield. Elias knew about my businesses, of course. He was my silent partner, my most trusted advisor, the one who encouraged me to buy my first small dress shop when I was just a young woman with a dream. Together, we built an empire from scratch, always keeping to the shadows, always pretending to be a regular middle-class family so our children could have a normal life. But Elias wasn't here to protect me from vipers like Kimberly anymore. Now I would have to protect myself. And I would do it with the quiet, devastating style that only a 70-year-old woman with 50 years of business experience could command. The next day, while Kimberly was no doubt bragging on social media about her act of charity and offering to lend me clothes, I was in my executive office, a sleek, minimalist space on the top floor of a downtown skyscraper, reviewing the quarterly numbers for all my companies. My personal assistant, an impeccably efficient woman named Estelle who had been with me for 20 years, walked in with a tray of coffee. "The monthly reports, Miss Vance," she said, placing a thick pile of documents on my polished mahogany desk. "How are sales looking at the downtown boutique? Excellent numbers this quarter. The new collections have been very well received. And the personnel?" Estelle hesitated for a moment, a subtle shift in her professional demeanor. "There are a few situations that require your attention." "Tell me." "Tiffany Albright has had several more incidents with clients. Apparently she makes comments about who can and cannot afford certain pieces." "Interesting." My daughter-in-law had not only humiliated me, but she was also actively driving away my customers with her snobbish, short-sighted attitude. "Anything else?" "Security cameras have captured some questionable behavior. She uses her personal phone for hours during her work shifts. She's consistently late for her opening duties, and yesterday she was seen taking multiple photos of herself with new merchandise she did not purchase, presumably for her social media." Every word was another nail in her professional coffin. "Estelle, I want you to schedule a meeting for me for next Friday, with all the management of the downtown boutique." "Any specific reason for the meeting, ma'am?" I smiled, a true smile for the first time since Elias's funeral. "It's time to make some personnel changes." The week following the funeral unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated symphony of family hypocrisy. Kimberly took every available opportunity to remind everyone how generous she had been with me, offering her wardrobe and her invaluable connections to the high-fashion world. On Wednesday morning, I received a call from my son, Julian. "Mom, Kimberly told me she offered to help you out with your wardrobe situation." "Yes, she was very kind," I replied, my voice dripping with manufactured submissiveness. "Look, Mom, I know Dad handled all the finances, and things must be tough for you now. If you need any money—" The irony was exquisite. My own son offering me a paltry sum from his middle management salary when I could buy his entire suburban house with the loose cash in my personal safe. "Don't worry, Julian. I'll manage with your father's pension." "Are you sure? Because Kimberly says your apartment looks a bit basic, and your clothes—" "Your wife is right, son. I don't understand fashion the way she does." I could practically hear the satisfaction in his voice, the relief of his wife being validated. Well, she really knows the business. She works at one of the city's most exclusive boutiques, Vance Atelier. Her bosses really trust her. If only he knew I was the exact boss they trusted so much, the one whose vision he was so dismissively casting aside. She must be very talented, I murmured. She is. In fact, she's expecting a promotion soon. Her supervisor told her there's a good chance she'll be moved up to junior manager. This was interesting information. Janice hadn't mentioned anything about a potential promotion for Kimberly. My daughter-in-law was likely inventing the story to bolster her own fragile ego and impress my son. I'm so happy for her, Julian. Yeah, and you know what, Mom? When she gets that promotion, we'll be earning more money, and we can help you out more often. Maybe we can even take you shopping to some decent places. Every word that came out of my son's mouth felt like another small betrayal. How had I raised a man so blind to his wife's cruelty, so easily swayed by her superficial charms? That's very considerate of you, son. After hanging up, I immediately called Estelle. Estelle, I need any and all information on rumors of a promotion for Kimberly Albright at the downtown store. Estelle was back to me within 10 minutes. There are no such rumors, Miss Vance. In fact, her direct supervisor, a wonderful manager named Diane, informed me just yesterday that she's considering putting Kimberly on formal probation because of her deteriorating attitude with the clients. Perfect. Do you have the other reports I asked for ready? Yes, ma'am. The documented incidents, the security recordings, and the written testimonials from clients who complained about her behavior. Excellent work, Estelle. Now, I need you to do one more thing for me. Tell me. I want you to discreetly investigate the personal financial situation of both Kimberly and Julian Albright. Income, expenses, debts, everything. Estelle, a consummate professional, asked no questions. After 20 years of working with me, she knew that when I requested financial information on someone, especially family, I had my reasons. On Thursday afternoon, the results of the investigation arrived on my desk, and they were even more delightful than I had expected. Julian and Kimberly were living completely and utterly beyond their means. Their apartment rent was $3,500 a month, more than Kimberly's entire pre-tax salary. They had accumulated credit card debts exceeding $40,000. They had a car loan of $22,000 for a vehicle they couldn't afford. And, most deliciously, they had requested a salary advance from the boutique just last month to cover their expenses. But the crown jewel of the report, the detail that made me lean back in my chair with a slow, satisfied smile, was this. They had recently applied for a mortgage to buy a $250,000 house. And they had done so using Kimberly's imminent and entirely fictional promotion and future raise as collateral. The house of their dreams, the future they had so carefully planned, all of it depended on an ascent that was never, ever going to materialize. Friday arrived faster than I had anticipated. I dressed with meticulous care, selecting my most understated yet undeniably elegant executive attire. It was a black Chanel suit I had purchased in Paris the previous year, paired with a simple strand of authentic Mikimoto pearls. It was nothing flashy, but any true fashion expert, anyone with a discerning eye, would immediately recognize its quality and pedigree. At precisely 10 o'clock in the morning, I arrived at the downtown boutique. My boutique. Good morning, Mrs. Coleman. Diane, the supervisor, greeted me, using my married name as she always did in public to maintain my anonymity. The other managers are waiting for you in the office upstairs. I walked through the store, my store, observing every detail with a critical eye. The employees moved with diligence and grace, attending to clients with a level of professionalism that made me proud. All except one. Kimberly was leaning against the main counter, deep in a loud conversation on her cell phone, laughing as if she were in a bar with friends. Her uniform was wrinkled, her makeup was overdone, and her entire demeanor was utterly inappropriate for the sophisticated, serene environment I had painstakingly cultivated in my establishments. "Girl, you will not believe this," I heard her say into the phone as I drew nearer. "My mother-in-law is so pathetic. I swear. Julian told me yesterday that we can take her shopping when I get my promotion. Imagine having to teach a 70-year-old woman how to dress." She laughed at her own cruel joke, while a well-dressed customer stood waiting patiently to be served, an invisible ghost in Kimberly's self-absorbed world. Yeah, I work at the most exclusive boutique in the city. My boss is super cool. She trusts me with everything. In fact, she's probably making me a junior manager next week. The lies piled upon lies, each one more grandiose than the last. Fascinating. So, My mother-in-law showed up to her husband's funeral dressed like a charity case. I swear, it looked like she bought her dress at Burlington. I was so secondhand embarrassed for her. The waiting client, clearly annoyed by the blatant lack of service, moved to another counter where a different sales associate greeted her warmly. "You know what the funniest part is?" Kimberly continued, blissfully unaware of everything happening around her. "She actually thinks her cheap little dress was elegant. The poor old lady has absolutely no idea what real fashion is." It was at that precise moment that I decided to approach her. "Excuse me," I said, my voice soft and gentle. Kimberly turned, and for a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, likely because she had never seen me dressed so appropriately before. "Oh, Eleanor, what are you doing here?" she asked, covering the mouthpiece of her phone with her hand, her annoyance at the interruption written all over her face. "I came to do some shopping," I replied, my expression one of pure innocence. "Julian gave me some money and said you could help me choose something appropriate." Her attitude changed in an instant. The idea of playing the grande dame of fashion, of teaching me, the uncultured simpleton, how to dress, visibly excited her. "Oh, that's wonderful. Got to go," she told her friend on the phone. "I have to help my mother-in-law stop making a fool of herself in public." She hung up the phone and looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. "All right, Eleanor. First, we need to establish a budget. How much did Julian give you? Because things are not cheap here. It's not like that flea market you usually shop at." "Julian gave me $500, I lied, naming a figure that was both plausible and insultingly low for my own store. Kimberly laughed, a short, sharp bark of a sound. $500? Oh my God, with $500 in here you can barely afford a pair of earrings. But fine, let's see what we can do with so little." She led me to the accessories section, the most affordable part of the store. "Look, Eleanor, these scarves are on sale. They're $200 each, but they're very pretty. They could add a touch of class to your style." She picked up one of the scarves, a beautiful silk piece from my spring collection of the previous year, and showed it to me with the condescending air of a teacher instructing a slow child. "See the quality of this silk? This is what true elegance is, not those rags you normally wear." The scarf she held was one I had personally overseen the design of, from the initial sketch to the final weave. "It's very beautiful," I admitted honestly. "Right? I have a good eye for these things. That's why my bosses are going to promote me. They recognize my talent." Just then, Diane, the store manager, approached us with a professional smile. "Kimberly, Miss Vance is waiting for you in the office." Kimberly paled slightly, the name of the mysterious owner invoking an almost Pavlovian response of fear and respect. "Miss Vance? My boss is here?" "Yes, she arrived a few minutes ago. She said it was urgent." I could see the panic flickering in Kimberly's eyes, quickly replaced by a surge of ego. She likely assumed the urgent meeting was to officially offer her the promotion she had invented. "But I'm helping a client," she said, gesturing toward me. "I'll take care of the lady." Diane intervened diplomatically, her gaze meeting mine for a brief, knowing second. Kimberly looked at me with annoyance. "Eleanor, I have a very important work matter to attend to. I'll be back in a few minutes to keep helping you." "Yes, of course, dear," I said, my voice filled with maternal warmth. "Go attend to your important matters." I watched her walk away, her hips swaying with a confidence she did not deserve, heading nervously toward the offices on the second floor. She was completely unaware that she was heading straight for her own professional execution. While Kimberly ascended the staircase, her mind likely filled with visions of a corner office and a higher salary, I remained on the sales floor, savoring the exquisite irony of the situation. Diane, my trusted supervisor for over a decade, approached me with a knowing smile once Kimberly was out of earshot. "How was the performance, ma'am?" she asked in a low, respectful voice. "Better than I could have possibly expected," I replied. "That woman has just sealed her professional fate with her own words." The security recordings captured the entire phone conversation and her subsequent behavior toward you. "Do you want me to go up and join the other managers now?" "Let's wait a few more minutes," I said, a glint in my eye. I want her to get good and nervous, sitting in that conference room all by herself, wondering where the great and powerful Miss Vance is. In the meantime, I decided to take a leisurely stroll through my store, observing how it functioned without my visible presence. The other employees were models of professionalism, serving every customer with courtesy, knowledge, and a genuine warmth that I had always insisted upon as part of the Vance Atelier brand. All except for the one who had just gone upstairs. I approached one of the younger sales associates, a bright-eyed girl named Chloe, whom I had personally interviewed and hired 6 months ago. "Excuse me," I said, affecting the voice of a regular, slightly intimidated client. "What do you think of the service from the young woman who was at the front counter a moment ago, the one with the curly hair?" Chloe looked up, her expression momentarily nervous before she answered. "You mean Kimberly?" "Yes, I think that was her name." The girl hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with being asked to comment on a colleague. "Well, ma'am, it's not really my place to say. I'm just curious." She seemed very confident. "Look, ma'am, I would much rather help you. What can I get for you today?" Her diplomacy impressed me. She was exactly the type of employee I valued, professional, discreet, and fiercely loyal to the company's integrity. "I'm actually just waiting for someone," I replied. "But tell me, have you worked here long?" "6 months, ma'am. It's my first job in luxury retail, and I absolutely love it." "And what's the work environment like?" Chloe glanced toward the stairs again, as if to ensure Kimberly was not returning. "Most of my colleagues are wonderful. They are very professional, always willing to help and teach me. But," she stopped, hesitating to continue. "But, I shouldn't say this, but some people seem to think that working here gives them the right to treat others badly, as if the glamour of the boutique has gone to their head." Exactly what I had suspected. "Have you seen specific situations?" "Well, I have seen how some employees will judge customers by their appearance before even speaking to them, as if they are deciding who is worthy of shopping here and who is not. That goes against everything we were taught in our training. And what did they teach you in your training, Chloe?" "That all customers deserve the same level of respect and attention, regardless of how they look or how they dress. That our owner, Miss Vance, says that true elegance comes from respect and humility, not from arrogance." My heart swelled with a quiet pride. My core values, the principles upon which I had built this entire empire, were being transmitted correctly, at least to the employees who were worth keeping. "Your boss sounds like a very wise woman." "She is," Chloe said with genuine admiration. "Although I've never seen her in person, everyone here raves about her. They say she started from the bottom and built this entire company with nothing but hard work and solid principles." Just then, I saw Kimberly descending the stairs, a look of utter confusion on her face. She walked directly toward me, her brow furrowed in frustration. "Eleanor, didn't anyone serve you yet?" "What terrible service," she said, clearly annoyed at not having found her boss waiting for her upstairs. "This young lady was taking very good care of me," I replied, gesturing toward the brilliant Chloe. Kimberly looked at Chloe with a dismissive glance. "Oh, she's new. She doesn't know anything." "I'm the expert here. I've been here longer, and I have far more experience." Chloe discreetly stepped away, but I could see in her eyes that she had perfectly understood the kind of person Kimberly was. "Did you find your boss?" I asked innocently. "No, it seems she had to leave unexpectedly. But it doesn't matter. She was probably just going to tell me about my promotion. She always seeks me out for the important things." The lies just kept accumulating, each one more brazen than the last. "Well, in the meantime, perhaps we could continue looking at clothes for me." "Of course, Eleanor. But first, let me tell you something important. When I am promoted to manager, I am going to implement a lot of changes around here, especially in the area of customer service." "What kind of changes?" "For example, I am going to establish a dress code for clients. We can't have just anyone walking in here dressed any old way. This is a luxury boutique, not a bargain mart." Every word she spoke was more revealing than the last. "And if someone doesn't meet your dress code, well, then I will politely suggest they go to stores that are more appropriate for their level. It's for everyone's good, really. The real clients feel uncomfortable when they see people who clearly don't belong in here." "An interesting philosophy," I murmured. "Exactly. My boss will be so proud when she sees how I improve the store's image. She will probably give me a bonus for the initiative." She then led me to the most expensive dress section of the store, ironically toward a collection of my own most exclusive creations. "Look, Eleanor, these dresses are gorgeous, but they are obviously far out of your budget. They cost between $5,000 and $15,000 each. She picked up one of my favorite designs, a stunning champagne-colored gown with intricate hand-embroidered details. See this quality? This is true haute couture. I have a similar one at home. A very important client who was thrilled with my service gifted it to me. Another lie. Employees were strictly forbidden from accepting client gifts, and I personally reviewed all major sales reports. It's lovely, I admitted, touching the fine fabric. Yes, but it is definitely not for you. We need to find you something more realistic, something that matches your current style. She then directed me toward a back section of the store, where clearance items from past seasons were located. Here are some things that are more in your price range. Look, this gray dress is marked down to $400. It's perfect for ladies your age. The dress she was showing me was indeed from my collection, but from 3 years ago. It was a design I had personally discontinued because it did not meet my exacting quality standards. What do you think of this dress? I asked her, holding up the limp fabric. Honestly, it's not much, but for someone like you, it's fine. You don't have the figure or the presence to wear the truly exclusive pieces. Her words should have hurt me, but they didn't. They hurt me for a different reason. It hurt to know that such a cruel, superficial, and soulless person worked at my company, representing my values, my life's work to the public. You know what, Kimberly? I said finally, my voice calm and steady. I think you are right about my lack of style. She smiled triumphantly. I'm glad you finally recognize it. It's the first step toward improvement. But I have one question for you. Tell me, what would happen if someone pretended to be poor but was actually very wealthy? How should you treat that person? Kimberly laughed, a genuine hearty laugh. Oh, Eleanor, that only happens in the movies. Rich people don't walk around disguised as poor people. That's ridiculous. But hypothetically, if someone comes in here dressed like you, they definitely do not have money. It's impossible for someone with real resources to dress so. Basically, I see. Besides, why would a rich person ever pretend to be poor? It makes absolutely no sense. People with money want it to show, they want to flaunt it, like my VIP clients. They always arrive impeccably dressed, with expensive jewelry and in luxury cars. A very logical reasoning. That is why I am so good at this job, Eleanor. I know how to read people. I know exactly who can afford what and how to treat them accordingly. At that exact moment, Estelle, my personal assistant, entered the store discreetly. She saw me and approached with a calm, professional demeanor. Ma'am, they are waiting for you in the office, she said with a polite smile. Kimberly looked at her strangely, her eyes narrowing. Excuse me, who are you? I am Miss Vance's personal assistant, Estelle replied matter-of-factly. And what does my mother-in-law have to do with your boss? Estelle looked at me, awaiting her instructions. I gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Your mother-in-law is my boss. The color drained completely from Kimberly's face. The silence that followed Estelle's words was deafening, a sudden void in the sophisticated ambiance of the boutique. Kimberly looked at me as if she had just seen a ghost, her face cycling through every shade from chalk white to a sickly pale green. What? What did you just say? She stammered, her hand grasping the edge of a nearby counter to keep herself from falling. What you heard, Estelle replied with the same professional calm. Eleanor Vance is the founder and owner of this entire chain of boutiques, Vance Atelier. Kimberly spun around to face me, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and utter disbelief. No, it can't be. You live in that small apartment. You drive that old Honda. Your clothes. My $80,000 clothes? I interrupted gently, my voice no longer soft and fragile but filled with a quiet, steely authority. The dress that bothered you so much at my husband's funeral. 80,000, she repeated like an echo, the number too large for her brain to process. The same dress you considered to be clearance rack material, and the $12,000 pumps you said looked like they came from a flea market. Her words came out in broken, breathless gasps. But I've been working for you for 2 years. That's right, I said, taking a step closer. And during those 2 years, I have received multiple detailed reports about your inappropriate behavior with our clients. Estelle, ever prepared, pulled a sleek leather folder from her briefcase. Would you like me to read the reports, ma'am? Please, Estelle. I think Kimberly needs to hear exactly what her supervisors have documented about her work ethic. Kimberly slumped into a nearby velvet chair, her body suddenly devoid of its usual arrogant posture. She looked completely in shock. Report from March 15th, Estelle began, her voice clear and precise. Client complained that employee Kimberly Albright ignored her for 20 minutes because she determined, based on appearance alone, that the client did not have the economic profile to shop at the store. No, that's not. Report from April 22nd. A 60-year-old client was treated with contempt and condescension, being directed only to clearance items without being asked about her preferences or her budget. Each report was a new slap of reality across Kimberly's stunned face. Report from May 8th. Employee was seen using her personal phone for approximately 2 hours of her 8-hour shift, ignoring multiple customers who required assistance. I can explain. What are you going to explain, Kimberly? I asked, my voice tranquil but heavy with authority. Are you going to explain how you decided to publicly humiliate me at my own husband's funeral? Or would you prefer to explain how you just told me, mere moments ago, that you determine the value of a human being based solely on their appearance? Tears, real tears this time, began to pour from her eyes, tracing paths through her carefully applied makeup. Ma'am, I didn't know. If I had known who you were, exactly. That is the entire problem, Kimberly. Your respect for people is entirely conditional upon their perceived economic status. You are only kind to those you believe have money and can do something for you. I moved closer to her, my posture elegant but undeniably intimidating. Tell me, Kimberly, what would you have done differently at the funeral if you had known who I really was? I never would have. You never would have what? You never would have shown your true personality. You never would have revealed just how cruel and superficial you are deep down inside. Kimberly was openly sobbing now, her shoulders shaking. Please, Miss Vance, it was a terrible misunderstanding. I respect you very much. I have always respected you. You respected me 5 minutes ago when you told me I didn't have the figure or the presence to wear quality clothes. That was your true and honest opinion of your mother-in-law, the woman who raised the man you claim to love. Kimberly's crying intensified. Other employees had begun to gather at a discreet distance, not coming too close, but clearly aware that something monumental was happening. Estelle, I said to my assistant, could you please read the final report? Of course, ma'am. Report from this morning. Employee Kimberly Albright was recorded by security cameras speaking disparagingly about a client who turned out to be her own family member, violating multiple company privacy and professionalism policies. Also, I added, my voice turning colder, she lied about a non-existent promotion to impress her husband and then applied for a mortgage based on that lie. Kimberly's head snapped up, a new wave of fear washing over her face. How do you know about the loan? Kimberly, I know everything I need to know about the people who work for me, especially when those people also happen to be my family, Estelle continued, her tone unwavering. The financial investigation shows debts of over $60,000, household expenses exceeding family income by nearly 300%, and multiple unreported salary advances. Unreported, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air, which means that on top of everything else, you have been lying on your official company financial documents. Ma'am, please, I can explain everything. I needed the money to maintain a lifestyle you cannot possibly afford, to flaunt a wealth you do not possess, all while belittling others for their apparent lack of resources. The irony of the situation was perfect, a beautifully closed circle. Kimberly, who had so viciously mocked my supposed poverty, was the one who was truly, desperately broke. Kimberly, I said, my voice growing even colder, I want you to understand something very important. I am not bothered that you did not know who I was. I am bothered by how you treated the person you thought I was. But ma'am, I am bothered that you considered it appropriate to humiliate a 70-year-old widow at her husband's funeral. And I am profoundly bothered that you base your respect for other human beings on the price of their clothing. It wasn't my intention. It wasn't your intention to show your true character. Because that is exactly what you did. I turned toward Estelle. Do you have the documents ready? Yes, ma'am. Everything is prepared. Kimberly looked at us with mounting terror, her eyes darting between the folder in Estelle's hands and my impassive face. What documents? Your termination papers, of course. No, please, I need this job. We have debts, payments, the new house. The new house you plan to buy with money from a promotion that never existed and never would. Please, Miss Vance, I swear I'll change. I'll be different. You'll change? You'll be different? I approached her again, standing directly in front of her. Kimberly, you are 32 years old. If you have not learned how to treat people with basic human respect by this age, you are not going to learn it now. But it's my family. I'm your daughter-in-law. Exactly. You are my daughter-in-law, and that makes your behavior all the more unforgivable. Estelle handed me the folder. The termination documents, ma'am. Thank you, Estelle. I took the folder and showed it to Kimberly. Here is your termination letter. It is effective immediately. You can't do this. It's personal revenge. Personal revenge? I let out a soft, humorless laugh. Kimberly, this is a simple application of business policy. Customer mistreatment, misuse of work time, lies on official documents, and multiple, flagrant violations of the Code of Conduct. But I need this job. My husband will... Your husband is going to find out a great many things today, I interrupted, including how his wife treats his mother when she thinks no one important is watching. Kimberly's tears had now turned into desperate, hiccuping sobs. Please, I beg you, give me one more chance. You already had your chance, Kimberly. You had it during the 2 years you worked here, and especially, you had it on the day of the funeral, when you could have chosen to show compassion instead of cruelty. But you didn't know. And that is exactly the point. Your true character is revealed only when you think there are no consequences for your actions. Estelle, I said, turning to my assistant while Kimberly continued to sob uncontrollably, please call security to escort the employee out of the building. No, wait! Kimberly screamed, standing up desperately. It can't end like this. I'm family. Family behaves with mutual respect, Kimberly. A bond you decided to break. I swear I'll change. Give me one last chance, like the chance you gave me on the day of my husband's funeral? Like the consideration you showed when you decided to turn the most painful moment of my life into your personal showcase of superiority? Kimberly approached me with her hands clasped, literally begging. Miss Vance, please, think about Julian. Think about your son. If you take my job away, you will ruin our marriage. I will ruin your marriage. I looked at her with genuine, unfeigned disbelief. Kimberly, you ruined your marriage the day you decided to publicly humiliate your husband's mother. But he'll hate me. He won't understand. Oh, he will understand perfectly. Especially when I show him the security recordings from today's performance. Her face fell even further if that were possible. Recordings? Every word you said about me, about my clothes, about my supposed lack of class, every cruel comment you made on the phone, thinking no one important was listening. Estelle intervened discreetly. Security is on the way, ma'am. Perfect. I turned back to Kimberly. You now have approximately 5 minutes to clear out your locker and turn in your employee badge. This is an abuse of power. It's family persecution. Abuse of power? My voice hardened, losing its calm detachment and gaining a sharp, dangerous edge. Kimberly, the only abuse of power here was when you, a young woman in a position of perceived authority in this store, humiliated a 70-year-old woman in front of her entire family because you thought you could do so without consequences. But you have millions. I only have this job. And whose fault is that, Kimberly? Did I force you to live a life beyond your means? Did I force you to lie about non-existent promotions? Did I tell you to apply for loans based on your fantasies? Chloe, the young employee who had spoken to me earlier, approached timidly, her eyes wide. Ma'am, do you need anything? Yes, Chloe. I want you to observe this very carefully. This is a lesson on why we treat all customers with the exact same level of respect, no matter how they look. Kimberly looked at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated hatred. You're going to use this for lessons? Exactly. Your behavior will serve as the perfect example in our future training sessions on precisely what not to do. It's humiliating. Humiliating? I laughed again, a sound devoid of any humor. Kimberly, you humiliated me at my husband's funeral. In front of my family, my friends, people I have known for decades, and you did it for sport. I was only trying to help her. Help me? By calling me classless? By telling everyone I looked like a pauper? The other employees had now gathered closer, their fascination with the drama overcoming their professional discretion. I could see in their faces a mixture of shock and, I must admit, a certain satisfaction at finally seeing Kimberly face consequences for her years of toxic behavior. Miss Vance, Diane, my trusted supervisor, intervened. Do you want us to document this incident to share with the other branches as a case study? An excellent idea, Diane. Let it serve as a stark warning about the real-world consequences of mistreating our customers. Kimberly turned to Diane desperately. Diane, you know I'm a good worker. Say something. Diane looked at her with an expression mixing compassion and deep disappointment. Kimberly, I gave you multiple verbal warnings about your attitude with clients, especially with the older ladies. But I never thought. You never thought what, Diane? That the older ladies deserved respect? That they might have more money than they appeared to have? That they might be connected to important people? It's not that. Then what is it, Kimberly? I asked directly, my eyes locking onto hers. Explain your philosophy of life to me. Explain why it is acceptable to mistreat people you consider to be inferior. I don't consider them inferior. Then why did you treat me as if I were? Why? She stopped, clearly unable to answer without admitting her true, ugly nature. Because you thought you could do it without consequences, I completed the sentence for her. Because you thought I was just a poor old lady who had no power to fight back. Just then, 2 uniformed security guards arrived, their presence calm but firm. Miss Vance? Yes. Please escort Miss Albright while she gathers her personal belongings. She no longer works here. Kimberly walked toward her locker with slumped shoulders, escorted by the 2 guards. But before she reached it, she turned back to me one last time. What are you going to tell Julian? I am going to tell him the truth, Kimberly. I am going to show him exactly who the woman he married really is. He loves me. He won't care. He won't care that his wife humiliated his mother at his father's funeral. He won't care that you lied about your job to secure fraudulent loans. He won't care that you have put your family in a desperate financial situation because of your own fantasies of grandeur. Kimberly had no answer for that. As she cleared out her locker, I addressed the employees who had witnessed the entire spectacle. I want you all to understand something very important, I said, my voice carrying through the now silent boutique. In my stores, we treat every single customer as if they were the most important person in the world, regardless of how they dress or how much money they appear to have. They all nodded solemnly, their eyes fixed on me. And do you know why? Chloe timidly raised her hand. Because it's the right thing to do. Exactly, Chloe. Because it is the right thing to do. But also because we never, ever know who the person standing in front of us truly is. Like you today? Another employee asked. Like me today. But more importantly, like anyone who walks through that door, every customer deserves respect, kindness, and our full professional attention. Estelle approached me again. Ma'am, would you like me to prepare a meeting with Julian for this afternoon? Yes, Estelle, it is time for my son to know the whole truth. Kimberly, who had heard this while stuffing her belongings into a cardboard box, ran toward me, her face streaked with tears. No, please don't tell Julian anything. Let me explain it to him. You're going to explain it with more lies? No, I'll tell him the truth. What truth, Kimberly? The truth about how you treated me? The truth about your debts? The truth about the fake promotion? Everything. I'll tell him everything. Too late. You had 2 years to tell him the truth. You had an opportunity to apologize after the funeral. You chose to lie, every single time. The guards gently but firmly escorted her toward the exit, carrying her box of personal belongings. At the last moment, she turned and yelled, "This isn't over! I'll fight this! Please do," I replied calmly. "It will be fascinating to see how you explain your behavior to a judge." A judge? Oh yes, Kimberly. Defamation of character, creating a hostile work environment, fraud on business documents. I have enough evidence to keep you busy in court for years. Her face went completely white before the guards finally ushered her out of the building, the glass doors closing behind her with a soft, final whoosh. Once she was gone, a profound silence filled the boutique. The employees looked at me with a mixture of respect, admiration, and, I admit, a little bit of healthy fear. Well, I said finally, breaking the silence, I think we have all learned something valuable today. Diane approached me, her composure restored. Miss Vance, Would you like me to call human resources to start the replacement process for her position? Yes, but I want the new employee to go through a more rigorous interview process, with a special focus on values and customer service philosophy. Of course, and Diane, I want Chloe to receive an immediate promotion and a raise. Her professionalism and integrity today were exemplary. Chloe blushed a deep shade of crimson and smiled timidly. Thank you, Miss Vance. Don't thank me yet. With the promotion comes more responsibility. I left the boutique feeling strangely empty. The revenge I had so carefully planned was complete. But now, I had to face the hardest part. Explaining to my son why I had just destroyed his wife's career, and quite possibly, his marriage. But that would come later. For now, I had to go home and prepare the evidence I would show Julian that very afternoon. At precisely 5 o'clock that afternoon, my son Julian arrived at my apartment, his face a mask of confusion and distress. He had received my call 2 hours earlier, a call in which I had urgently asked him to come over because I needed to talk to him about something very important concerning Kimberly. Mom, what happened? Kimberly came home an hour ago, crying hysterically. She said she was unfairly fired and that you had something to do with it. Sit down, Julian. What I am about to tell you is going to change a great many things. My son sat on the very sofa where he had played with toy cars as a child, where he had come to me for advice during his tumultuous teenage years. Now, at 35, he looked completely lost, a man caught between two worlds he didn't fully understand. Mom, Kimberly told me something really strange. She said you own the boutique where she worked, Vance Atelier? That's impossible, right? I took a deep, steadying breath. Julian, for your entire life, your father and I have kept the true nature of our family's wealth a secret from you and your sister. What do you mean? I stood up and walked toward my secret study. Come with me. It is time you see who your mother really is. When I opened the hidden door behind the bookshelf, Julian gasped. His expression shifted from confusion to utter astonishment as he stepped into my private office, a room filled with business documents, architectural plans, and photographs of my boutiques from around the world. What is all this? This, my son, is the empire your father and I built together over the last 40 years. I showed him the property certificates for the 17 boutiques, the contracts for the 3 textile factories in Italy, and the bank statements showing figures he had never imagined in his wildest dreams. Mom, we're millionaires? Yes, Julian, we are very rich. We have been rich for most of your life. But why? Why did we live like that? Why did you never say anything? Because your father and I wanted you and Belle to grow up with real values. We wanted you to understand the importance of hard work, of humility, and of respect for all people, regardless of their station in life. Julian collapsed into a leather chair, his face pale. I can't believe it. All this time, you had the chance to show your true character without the corrupting influence of money. And Dad knew? Your father was my partner in everything. He was the heart of this family, and I was the head of the business. Together, we decided to keep this secret until the appropriate time to reveal it. And when was the appropriate time going to be? When you demonstrated that you could handle the responsibility that comes with such wealth. When you showed that your values were firmly and unshakably established. Julian looked at me with a mixture of admiration and a deep simmering resentment. And what does any of this have to do with Kimberly being fired? That was the question I had been waiting for. I picked up the folder Estelle had so meticulously prepared, the one containing all the evidence against his wife. Julian, your wife has been working at one of my boutiques for 2 years. During those 2 years, she has demonstrated a repeated pattern of mistreating clients based solely on their appearance. That can't be true. She's the best salesperson they have. I pulled out the first written report from a disgruntled customer. It is documented right here how your wife ignored a 60-year-old lady for nearly half an hour because she felt the woman didn't have the appropriate economic profile to shop at our store. Julian read the report, his brow furrowed in disbelief. This must be a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I pulled out the next document, and the next. And this? And this? Each report painted a clear, undeniable pattern of discriminatory and unprofessional behavior. But the most important thing, Julian, is not what she did at work. It is what she did to me. What did she do to you? On the day of your father's funeral, your wife decided to publicly humiliate me because of the clothes I was wearing. She called me classless. She said I looked like a pauper. She mocked my dress, your father's last gift to me, in front of our entire family. Julian paled, the color draining from his face. Mom, Kimberly told me she was only trying to help you. Help me? You thought it was helping when she told me I was pathetic, that I was embarrassing the family, that I looked like a beggar? Mom, I thought she was just trying to help. You thought it was acceptable for someone to treat your mother that way because you assumed she was right about my supposed lack of class? No, it's not that. Then why didn't you defend me? Julian had no answer for that. His silence was his confession. You know what else I discovered today? I continued, pulling out the financial reports. That your wife has been lying to you about a non-existent promotion. That the two of you applied for a mortgage based on future income that was never going to materialize. How do you know that? Because I am a businesswoman, Julian. When someone attacks my family, I investigate everything about that person. I showed him the documents detailing their staggering debts, their excessive spending, their desperate financial situation. You owe over $60,000 on credit cards. You live in an apartment that costs more than Kimberly's entire salary. You have been constantly requesting salary advances just to stay afloat. Julian buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. My God. Your wife has been living a complete and utter lie, flaunting a wealth she does not have while making fun of others for their apparent lack of resources. And now, what's going to happen? Now, Julian, you have to decide what kind of man you want to be. What do you mean? Can you stand by a woman who so cruelly and publicly humiliated your mother on the day of your father's funeral? Or can you finally acknowledge that you married someone who does not share our family's values? Mom, she's my wife. And I am your mother. The woman who raised you, who taught you about respect and dignity, who sacrificed many of her own comforts to make sure you had an education in values, not just in academics. Julian was silent for a long, agonizing time. What do you want me to do? I don't want you to do anything, Julian. I want you to make your own decision, based on the truth you now know. And if I choose to stay with Kimberly, then you will have to live with the consequences of that choice. What consequences? The consequences of choosing to align yourself with someone who believes it is appropriate to humiliate elderly people for sport. Julian got up and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. My entire world is falling apart. No, Julian, your false world is falling apart. Now you have the opportunity to build something real. Will you help me? I will always help you, my son, but only if you prove that you deserve that help. How? By showing me that the man I raised, the good and decent man your father and I knew, still exists beneath all of your wife's toxic influence. Julian turned to me, tears shining in his eyes. Mom, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't defend you at the funeral. That, Julian, is the first step. And the second step? The second step is that you decide if you want to remain married to a woman who thinks it is acceptable to mistreat vulnerable people simply because she can. Julian nodded slowly, a look of grim resolution settling on his face. I need time to think, of course. But Julian, the time you have to think is not infinite. Some decisions, the most important ones, cannot be postponed forever. 2 days after my difficult confrontation with Julian, my phone rang at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was Belle, my daughter, and she sounded completely frantic. Mom, what in the world is going on? Julian called me at midnight crying. He was saying you're a millionaire and that Kimberly got fired from your own company. It's true. Good morning, Belle. Yes, all of it is true. How is it true? Since when are we rich? Why did you never tell me? Belle, come home this morning. It's time for you to know the whole truth, too. Mom, I am in total shock. Julian told me about the boutiques, about the money, about what Kimberly did at Dad's funeral. I can't process any of it. That is why you need to come. There are many things to explain. 2 hours later, Belle was sitting in my living room, looking at the same documents I had shown her brother. Her reaction, however, was completely different from his. Mom, why did you never trust us? I did trust you, Belle. I trusted that you would grow up to become good people without the corrupting influence of money tainting your character. But we could have had a better life. I could have gone to a private university, had better opportunities. And would you be the same person you are now if you had? Belle paused, thinking. I don't know. I do know. You would have grown up with a sense of privilege you wouldn't have earned or appreciated. You might have developed a sense of superiority that would have damaged the beautiful character you have today. But look what happened to Julian. He married a horrible woman who despises us. Exactly my point, Belle. Julian chose Kimberly when he thought we were a simple, middle-class family. That tells me there is something in his own character that needs to be examined. What do you mean? I mean that perhaps Julian was attracted to Kimberly precisely because she represented the